As part of our service tonight, we wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about grief. And so we have our own grief counselor who helps us out here at Westminster and does her own work as well, grief therapist, Cathy who's going to talk with us a bit about grief tonight. So Cathy, first of all, what is grief?
Well, I think that grief is any time that you're feeling upset about anything. Because they say there are over 60 different kinds of losses that you could grieve from. So that includes, loss of job, loss of empty nest syndrome, loss of career, loss of spouse, many, many different things beyond just, or not, I shouldn't say just, beyond someone's death. And grief is a normal and natural reaction. We're supposed to grieve. It's part of how we are.
So how is the pandemic causing grief right now?
People are grieving the loss of normalcy, I think,
Mm-hmm.
the loss of social connections. But what I've seen through the work that I've been doing is that there seems to be sort of a cumulative effect to grief. So the people that are coming to me to have some counseling are generally grieving a lot of other things as well. And then this grieving of the pandemic piled on top of that just seems to be the final straw sometimes.
So often people talk about the things like loss and grief being more difficult at this time of year during the Christmas season. Is that really true? And if so, why or why not?
I would say it probably is. People seem to have a lot of expectations of what Christmas should be. All those Hallmark movies, they haven't really done us any favors. And also sometimes for many people, if someone has died through the year, it's just another one of those firsts that are so hard to get through.
So how can people help their situation if they're grieving?
One of the things that people do with grief, there's so many things that we try to do with grief that aren't really helping us. And one of the things is that people try to curtail their tears. They try to stuff them down. And because tears are a natural thing, I think tears are a breakthrough, not a breakdown. And, just to let those tears pass through and let that pain pass through, interestingly, it's a kind of a paradox. The less you try to resist that, the faster it dissipates. So people talk about a good cry. It is a good cry because when you're done that good cry, you have the sense of, I'm just, it's all out of me now.
Yeah. It reminds me of Charlie Brown Christmas we did last year, and his phrase was always good grief.
Good grief.
Which is exactly what you're promoting, is that idea of good grief. It often strikes me that there's a reason God gave us tear ducts. They say there's chemicals and everything that helps us out as we cry.
Of course.
Of
course. And when you stifle that, you get a physical pain. You get lumps in your throat. You get tensing. Right. And when you let that go, but we've been geared to let it, to stifle it. It's been the way we've learned things is to hold it in and be strong and keep it contained.
Speaking of that, then, do you see a difference between men and women and the way they deal with grief?
Probably I do. Now, certainly the men feel the grief, and women sometimes have already discovered some of the ways to make things a little less painful.
Sure.
One of the things is the social network, and women are better at having their friends and really talking to their friends.
I'm wondering if, since we're having this conversation in church, if there are any biblical stories or principles that would tie into your thoughts around grief.
Well, a lot of times when people are grieving, they're grieving. The grief includes guilt and or resentment. And so our whole church concept is to forgive. And in forgiving yourself, I don't know if the Bible says anything about forgiving yourself, but I'm sure, it makes sense to me that that's just as important as forgiving other people. And of course, then there's the verse, Jesus wept.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Which is the shortest verse in the Bible, but
great memory verse,
that's why we know it. But Jesus was grieving the loss of his friends, and he was grieving and crying for the pain that his friends' sisters were feeling. So
Yeah.
even Jesus wept.
Yeah.
So that's got to mean something.
I often tell folks too that God has big shoulders.
Right.
That God can carry some of this for you, and you can even be angry at God, and God can deal with that. At least you're still in relationship that way. So.
And then there's the other thing about surrender, and this kind of goes along with letting your tears out. Just surrender. Just let it out. You don't have to control it all. You don't have to, be in control. Just let it go.
So what would be your advice to someone who's grieving right now, whether it's a death or a loss or dealing with all the change in the pandemic or Christmas time? What advice would you give to folks that are struggling?
Well, first of all, don't judge your own emotion. If you're struggling, it's a normal thing. I always say to people, there's nothing wrong with you. If you were not feeling this way and after having experienced these painful events, then that might mean there was something wrong with you. But because you are feeling them, that means there's something right with you. So the more you judge you start judging your own emotion, you've really created a new problem.
Right.
And of course, the social network part is so important.
Which has been a challenge during the pandemic, but
Yes,
I'm glad
has.
people are doing some creative things to stay connected,
Yes,
and
yes, we've got
I'm
phone
glad.
calls and-
Yes, and I'm glad we've got a church community that is helping to keep people connected as well. So if anyone is really struggling, by all means contact the church. We will get you in touch with Cathy, and Cathy has helped so many people. And Cathy, we thank you for your ministry inside our church and beyond, and all that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.